talk a little about some of the documentation. Hello students and welcome to the first session for project management. This is our second subject in the Diploma of Management and Diploma of Business, the dual qualification. As you can see there, professional development is the first one. We're up to now the second one, so let's click on that. This is the very first resource support session. So as per the previous subject, this one's going to be run in a similar fashion. We have 3 videos for you guys, which will be breaking down the learning activities and the content for the particular subject. And there'll be a 4th webinar, just like the first one, professional development. There'll be a 4th webinar, which will be dedicated to the assessment support. So helping and talking you through the actual assessment tasks. In this session, or by the end of this session, you'll have all of the information that you need to successfully complete the first 2 learning activities, which I've just highlighted on my screen. The first one there is scoping and stakeholders, and the second one is project planning and preparation. So you can see there's 5 learning activities for this subject, and then you've got 3 assessment tasks to complete this subject, project management. And just reiterating, this is the first workshop, the resource support workshop number 1 out of 3. This session will be taking you through those first 2 learning activities, scoping and stakeholders, and project planning and preparation. A couple things to note, you'll see under the learning activities, you've got a couple of different looking icons on that left-hand side. These 2 here have the orange tick in the middle of the page, whereas the other ones have the hand cupping the page. The key difference with these ones are the ones that have the tick that we're going through right now. They indicate that the actual set of questions or that learning activity is actually a automatically responded answer, I guess you could say. So what happens is there's no need for trainer intervention at all. You place your answers in and it will give you an automatic response, and we'll just show you what that looks like. When you click on it, if you actually go to the actual attempt itself. So for example, here we go, we've got a range of mix and match. So you actually just select the correct answer. You've got multiple choice. You've got select 9 documents out of the list. You've got a video to watch, and you select, it's again multiple choice. You've got a whole range of different answers that are automatically graded for you. You are required to get 100% on each of these. You have unlimited attempts on these. So guys, don't hesitate to get a mistake, anything like that. You've got unlimited attempts on these. So these questions don't require the trainers to put any grades or feedback in. All of the other ones do. So the other ones that have the hand cupping are requiring you guys to actually submit a Word document or supply some free typed answers that do require grades from your trainers. These first 2 that we're going to be talking through today in the first session don't require that at all. So you're ready to go off and attempt those. As I said, you need to get 100% right, which means you'll need a green box for each of these 7 questions in the first set. If you see a red box, it means you've got the question wrong. If you see a yellow box, it means that it's partially correct. You'll still need to go back and re-answer those ones that are partially correct. A couple of other things to note on this subject before we go through the actual topics for today's session. Down the bottom of the page, you've got some additional reading and resources, some important things to check out there. Supplementary materials. If you're looking for additional materials, you can click on the supplementary materials list. It does give you a range of articles and videos to read that might be of use. But something particularly useful sits right underneath it. It's what we call our glossary of terms. And there's a whole heap of definitions in there that are really helpful. Project management. This subject is all about project management. Project management is quite a theoretical subject. So it's sort of a half and half with the Diploma of Business and Diploma of Management. You get some subjects which are quite theoretical, such as this one, and you get other subjects which are a little bit more about the soft skills. So, you know, in terms of management, leadership skill, communication skill, and so forth. This one sort of tends to look at a little bit more sort of theory. So you'll find that you come up against a whole range of maybe words that you haven't seen before. We're talking about scoping of a project today. So for example, if I want to know what the definition of a scope of a project is, I could go to that glossary of terms in this subject to get some information there. So that's just a little bit of an overview, I guess. Another interesting thing to check out whilst looking at this subject, project management, if you click on the additional reading and resources, one of the links there is a PDF file of what we call our unit overview. If I click on that and then open the file, it'll actually give you a link to the website which breaks down what this actual unit is all about. So I can go directly to that website and see exactly what this unit is all about. It talks about The elements or performance criteria, these are the things that you'll effectively be doing whilst completing the subject. So defining a project, developing a project plan, administering and monitoring a project, finalizing and reviewing a project. They're the 5 sort of components of this particular subject. And by hook or by crook, through the learning activities, through the webinars, and then of course through your assessment tasks, you'll be hitting up each of those areas. We've got Alison and Alyssa in the room today. So hey guys, how you doing?
Hello,
I'm
everyone.
good.
I'm really well.
That's Alison. Got in
It
first.
is. I'm
Welcome.
cheeky, sorry.
Hi Alyssa, how you doing?
I'm good, Adam. How are you?
I'm really, really well. Glad to have
Good.
all of us together. Now, you guys ran the webinars for the very first subject, professional development, did a great job. So the 3 of us will be looking to effectively be running these webinars together moving forward so that all of our students can hear all of our voices, because we are effectively, all 3 of us are training this first cohort of students. So you've got the 3 of us as your voices here, guys. So I guess we should just take it away, or get started in presenting the information for this subject. Before we do, Alyssa or Alison, did you want to add anything to, I guess, what I've just gone through with the introduction, in terms of the unit itself, or in terms of some supplementary materials, or anything else that you think is worthy of a mention before we get stuck into it?
No, not really from my perspective. I mean, I think it's important that you highlighted that glossary down there. I think that's a really important tool because obviously obviously this is the second unit for most students, so they would have come off finishing professional development, which was a very different style of unit. It was very reflective and very kind of self-analytical almost, but this is very much a different style of unit. So very technical, can be a little bit heavy on the old theory, but the resource down the bottom that you've pointed out, Adam, with that glossary, is a really, really helpful tool if you're kind of struggling to understand some of the key concepts there. So don't forget that that's there.
Yep, absolutely. And look, the course does split them up, so you're not going to get too many of these theoretical subjects. You're not going to get too many of those subjects that you had in the first run, professional development, where it's all about goal setting and introspective sort of studies. So you know what? It's a real mixture, and it's actually important probably to have a real mixture in any case. So that we do split it up for you, which is good. But yep, absolutely, that glossary is definitely really handy.
Mm.
But I guess let's just jump straight into it. I might actually flick
Sure.
my screen over to yours, Alyssa, if that's okay, if you don't mind driving the screen.
Oh,
Only because
okay, go.
that's okay. I'm just going to flick it over now. Look, I think a good starting point, generally speaking, whenever we introduce a new subject, is to sort of work in and around a definition, or to use a few definitions just to sort of break down, I guess, some of the words. This is project management. It's all about projects. So what is a project? I mean, I guess the first thing I would say when we're talking about a project in terms of business, or regardless if it's a project for business or if it's a project for your own uh, personal endeavors, is a project is unique. And what I mean by unique is it's different
Mm.
from your normal day-to-day activities of the business. You know, a project in business is usually designed to increase opportunities for the business, or to drive a new process, or things like that. And there's usually a really strong link between the strategic direction of the business and the projects that are running and being implemented. Once a new system, or once a new project has made it all the way through from the initial stage of the project, which we'll be talking about a little bit now, with scoping and planning and preparation, right through to its rollout. Once it becomes part of the day-to-day runnings of the business, we actually call that something called BAU. It's a term you'll see in business, and BAU just stands for business as usual. So the key to a project, and the way that I see a project, is it seems to have a start, a middle, and an end. And that's what I meant by it being something that's unique. It's not the day-to-day runnings of the business. As mentioned, that's business as usual. But usually, if something new, like a new process, or we're now selling a new line of whatever it might be, to bring those new ideas, to bring those new processes in, it quite often is in and around a project team, or you have a project team, a group of people that are working together to bring that new concept into the business. So there's a whole degree of planning that happens before it. Then you've got the actual implementation and rollout of the project, and finally you review the project at the end. And at the end of that project, then if everything is running really well and things are okay, then that actual whatever that process or whatever that change that's happened just becomes day-to-day business, becomes business as usual. But really, a project is to have a start, a middle, and an end. It is unique. It is a once-off occurrence. The thing
And I
about
think one of the
yes,
important things that you just said there too was, you know, it's all about leading a team of people too. So you're planning and managing related tasks, things that actually have a specific date and a specific purpose, and you know, involves the coordination of efforts of other people. So it's a team process. So it's unique in that way.
they're really fun as well, Alison. I mean, I'd like to hear
Mm.
any experience that you've had. I'm going to actually share a few of my own stories too. But the thing about project teams is they are really dynamic. They're exciting. They're challenging as well. You know, you really do learn about teams and team dynamics being in a project team. So we talk a little bit about teams and how to work with teams and all of that sort of stuff. But really, to get that hands-on experience, it's so invaluable. And working on these project teams really gives you an understanding on team dynamics and working with other people. Um, you really get to see how well you can influence other people in these environments as well, because they're once-off sort of unique environments. What happens is that you've got to make decisions really quickly. You've got to sort of understand the environment that you're in and make decisions really quickly to sort of it actually shows or teaches you how well you are able to influence other people. You know, when you speak to other people, listen, were you able to have some sort of influence on the direction of that project or on that team? I think for students, just to sort of get a bit more of an understanding on projects and um, how they kind of roll out. Guys, do you want to share any stories or any experiences you guys have had in terms of working with projects? I feel that anecdotes and stories do help to kind of paint a bit of a picture, and I certainly have a few. Do you guys want to start off or talk about any projects that you guys have been a part of?
Look, yeah, definitely. I'm happy to start off on any experience that I've had previously with regards to projects. I mean,
Thanks, Alyssa.
I was involved. I hope you can hear me. I was involved a few years back with quite a big project. I'm based in New South Wales, and we had a big client in Western Australia, and what we had to do was we had probably about 600 students where we had to roll out Certificate 3 and Certificate 4 to that specific amount of people. And what got this and what made this project quite unique is that 600 students were located at various mining sites throughout WA. So there was a lot of emphasis on that real planning element of a project rollout like this, because not only did we have a huge number of people, but we also had a lot of remote locations. So kind of working out what our strategy would be, how we would approach them, how we would deliver it so that it was also cost effective, took a lot of planning. We probably spent about 6 months actually planning before we actually rolled out the initial process. And it did add a very different dimension, because once you put like location and remote and travel time into things like that as well, and just the fact that we were from the East Coast and these guys were from the West Coast as well, it was also a very interesting, cultural interpretation of delivering a product over in WA. So that was a really big project that I was a part of, and I was very proud of the moment that we had the opportunity to start rolling it out and being a part of that. So for me, that was really a very successful project, albeit very incredibly demanding. And we had to make a few changes amongst the actual initial rollout process itself. But that's I guess what's great about a project is I think you are constantly learning and you're constantly exposed to different kinds of experience and different kinds of opportunities. So you have to think fast sometimes, and sometimes things don't work, and you're working with people that maybe you've never worked with before, as Alison you mentioned. And for me that was a really exciting project that I had the opportunity to work on.
It sounds exciting. Sounds great. I'm reliving your excitement actually listening.
I miss the Western Australia days.
And sunshine as well. That's always helpful.
And the sunshine. And the heat. Yeah, I miss the heat. Yeah.
But that, you know what they are, they're just dynamic. These project teams are really exciting. I mean, you can run into a little bit of conflict from time to time, but you know what? The teams themselves, because they've got to achieve, because it's a once-off situation, you tend to have everything out on the table. Um,
Mm.
So people tend to sort of, okay, we've got an issue, there it is, let's work through it. All right, what's the solution? And it's very much solutions focused. Let's get a solution to this problem right now. So again, you do learn a lot about yourself and how you work in certain environments under stress, under pressure. How do you sort of handle yourself in different situations? What sort of influence you're able to have on other people as well. But no, without a doubt, they're exciting. They're really exciting. They're dynamic. And there's something enjoyable about having an endpoint to a project that you're working on. I mean, we're so used to with our day-to-day when we go to work, it's just like one customer rolls in, the next one rolls in. It's just this never-ending flow of orders or invoices or customers. It doesn't stop. One of the enjoyable things
Mm.
about a project is it finishes. You can
Mm.
actually look back at your work and go, oh, we made it to the end, and I'm going to enjoy having a beer and talking about the wins that we had or the difficulties that we had, and you laugh about some of the arguments you might have had at the end of it. But they are really exciting. If you get the opportunity, students, to get involved in any projects, we do urge you to take that on with open arms.
Mm.
Alison, did you want to share anything yourself? Have you had it?
The big one recently that I'm sort of thinking of, it is business-like, but it was actually for a sporting club. We started a brand new sports club here in town, and I was secretary as part of the committee for that. So a brand new AFL club. So it all started with obviously a lot of meetings and trying to recruit the right committee at the beginning.
Wow.
And one of my first steps, I actually created a business plan for the new club because, as I said to everybody, we need to have clear focuses, the steps in place and the right people to do the right jobs along the way, or it's just going to be a mess. So from over 12 months ago, the first meetings began in the beginning of September last year, and we've just come through our first season this year, and one of our three teams won the premiership flag. So I think we did pretty well to get a brand new project like that up and running, got all the sponsors on board, got the canteen running efficiently every week, got the coaches, got all the players recruited, new colours, new uniform, new song, new flags, like absolutely everything. So everything had to be organised from as early as a year ago to get all the steps in place, meeting budgets, getting sponsors on board to help pay for things, and yeah, everything was just a huge success in the end. So it was very, very exciting to be involved in that, and to actually at the end of the year, the celebrations were just outrageous and ridiculous because we'd done a really good job and it was worth celebrating. So it was fantastic. So it was like a business project, even though it was, sports and all the people on the committee. We did it for our kids that play and that sort of thing. So
And
very personal, that one.
do you mind me asking, Alison, what was actually your role in that project team? What was your function, or what was the role that I think you mentioned right at the start, but do you mind just repeating that?
Yeah, I was the secretary and fundraising coordinator.
Okay, so who did
So
you,
very
so
hands-on.
you would have had a project manager that you reported to, so you were on the project team?
Yeah, so we had an executive committee. So we had a president,
Yeah.
then a vice president, a treasurer, myself as secretary, and then we had two other members of the general committee that sort of took direction and did a wide range of jobs. So that was sort of our executive team, and then obviously along the way we outsourced other people to come in and take their part in the project as well, but there was, generally speaking, that executive committee that ran the project from the president down.
It
So
sounds
it was very,
exciting.
very well structured,
And how did
really
it,
well structured.
and obviously this is a project because it had a logical conclusion date there. You're actually working to certain timelines. So
Yeah, and we were just, happy to get through season number 1 as the new club. And when we came out of it with 1 out of 3 premiership wins, we'd done exactly what we wanted to achieve and more. So it was great. But yeah, getting enough sponsors on board to be financially viable was, one of our small goals along the way, and that was ongoing. Having enough players to have 3 teams on the field each and every week, having really good coaches who are positive role models, all of those sorts of things. So there were lots of goals along the way, and just getting to the end of season 1 was what we were looking for, and then we, sort of did even better than we thought. It was awesome.
There you go. There's two great advocates there for project teams, guys. So get on board if you get the chance. I'll share one of my stories. I've had a few different projects that I've been a part of. One of the projects that I was a part of, I used to work in a call center that had 120 phone operators. We called them users, so 120 users or operators. The company itself did a lot of, or did gas and electricity connections around Australia. What the project was an upgrade of their what we call their hard and soft phones. So a hard phone is the physical phone, it's there, and a soft phone is actually the software on a computer. So typically, a lot of phone systems these days run through a computer system. You'll actually use a piece of software that's on your computer to answer the call or to drop the call. Call centers use these soft phones a lot so that they can manage their staff's break time. So you'll log on, you'll log off on break using those soft phones or using a particular software on your computer, those sorts of things. So my job in this project was to be what was the subject matter expert. Effectively, I was the go-between between the vendor, which was the company that designed the soft phone technology, and my company, who were the end users of the product. Essentially, my role was to check the requirements of the business that I worked for were being met. So part of my role was to take a document. Now, um, this is actually a document which is part of scoping or the initial phase of a project, so it's actually a good thing to mention now. It was called the Functional Requirements Document. Essentially, the Functional Requirements Document was a document that my company developed and said, these are all the things that we need the telephone to be able to do. It was really like a big checklist of things that really we needed the developers to deliver on. So the developers, like all good sales, everybody, yeah, we can do everything, we can do everything, we can do everything. My role was just to make sure that yes, those things were able to be done and being met. So part of part of my role in the project was doing a lot of what we call testing. So I would take the functional requirements document, i.e. the document that our company was using to say, this is what we need the phones to do. And then I would actually jump on the phones and basically go through and tick all of those items that were actually, that were actually being met. At the end of the project, the area that I sort of jumped into was part of rollout, which was training. So I was involved in training a lot of the staff members on how to use the new system. And then at the end, it was a bit of monitoring and review. So if there were any defects, we kept a list of defects and then reported those defects back to the vendor or the people that were actually, developed that piece of software. And so that's sort of how it all came through. The actual rollout of the project was when we put all of the new telephones on the desks of all of the 120 users in the call center, and that was effectively the rollout stage. And so that was a project that I was a part of. I think it just helps for students just to sort of see that projects come in many, many different shapes and forms. Um, Often they're used by businesses, as I said earlier, just to drive some of those strategic directions. So a business might be deciding to move into a new market. The business might be deciding to take on more customers, or it might need to improve on its computer systems to be able to take on new products or services. Whatever it might be, there's usually a project team that sits behind that transition of a new process or a new system in a business. And once everything's running, so right now that the same company that I was on that project team for, well, they're using those telephones right now. It's no longer a project because the project is finished. The implementation of those new phones was what the project was about. Once everything's running and everything's smooth, it becomes, as we mentioned earlier, BAU or business as usual. So did you guys want to go through any other examples of projects or anything else you'd like to add to projects or project teams? Maybe before we open the very first learning activity and just start to break down some of the elements of those activities.
Um, No, I'm good. I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, I think it's really important that if students are given the opportunity to participate in a project, I think definitely grab a hold of that opportunity, and it'll definitely enhance and add skills and add value to your experience. I know sometimes, you know, in a workplace you might be quite busy with doing your own elements of your own job, but if you do have that opportunity to participate, and it can be any type or any size of project, I mean, I really encourage them to go out there and kind of embrace an opportunity like that, because it is fun, and as you mentioned, it is unique and it is different, and it adds amazing value to an organisation as well as yourself. So I'm sure as we go along we might find some little additional bits of information or a few additional stories, but you know, I just say jump on board those projects.
Absolutely. And look, I find in project teams is you get very, very different people that are coming together because you've got somebody who's an expert in IT that can answer questions from an IT background. You've got somebody who's an expert in handling all of the customers, so they're going to be the representative of the customers in that project team. You've got somebody who's maybe a manager who's worked in 3 or 4 different departments, but everybody tends to bring a different area of expertise. So it's a really, I mean, one way it's a really challenging environment, but another way you really do, as we said, you learn a whole lot about how you operate, how you work, your own leadership skill. And look, leadership is, I guess, the key theme of this course. And what we effectively mean by leadership is the ability to influence other people. So, and that's really what it's about. So, how well can you influence others to either get motivated to do work or whatever it might be. So should we jump onto the first learning activity, scoping and stakeholders? What we could just do is have a look at each of the questions and then maybe just break down some of the some of what the students are required to do, or we'll just have a bit of a chat about it, I guess.
Sounds good. Cool.
So continue from the last preview. Yeah, that's the one. And as mentioned, these are all automatically graded, guys, so you are right to jump in there and start answering away. You've got a drop-down menu there. You've got to mix and match the first question. Oh, Alyssa, do you want to actually, can you open up a new tab, because we're looking at your screen right now. Can you open up a new tab for this subject and go to the learning materials? There's something really good to show in the learning materials. I think it's a good starting point.
Right, hold on a sec.
Sorry. Or I could do that and we could flick screens if you like.
I'll just...
I quite often find that people look at this topic and think, oh, I've got no idea on how to manage projects. But when you actually stop and think about it, you've probably managed 1 million of them throughout your own personal life, even if you don't feel that you've been an official part of a project team in a workplace. Have you ever painted a room in your house? Did you have to put some plans in place and do things in a certain order, and you had an outcome to achieve and a budget to adhere to? Did you have to get other people in to help you? You know, people are managing projects just getting through their lives. If you stop and break it down and think about it. So people that think, oh, this is, you know, a bit overwhelming looking at a subject like this, everybody's in reality had the experience in it. So I think going through the resources and the materials and the information in this unit is just going to make you so much more confident probably in yourself to take forward into so many areas.
That's a really, really good point, Alison. I'm actually really, really glad that you brought it up too, because we've only reflected on projects from the business side of things, but you're 100% correct. And all of us are involved in projects at home in our personal life, but particularly around the house is the most obvious place where you're going to sort of see those little once-off, those unique engagements, whether it be, as you said, renovating or repainting the house. For example, you might redesign your garden. And that whole process of redesigning is a project. You know, you go through that planning phase. You have to actually roll out the new garden, and then so they are projects in and of themselves. Once the actual garden's been designed and has been planted, and there's no errors and there's no issues, and we're all done now, that's now what we've been calling business as usual. Well, that's no longer a project anymore. So now that we're just watering the garden once a week, that's just the regular maintenance of that particular garden. The project's finished. But when we're going through all of these different elements, you can actually reflect on your own experiences that you might have had around the house, whether, as you've mentioned, whether it's a painting job or anything else, because I think it helps to just sort of put it into perspective or paint a bit of a picture. So, yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
Okay, now Adam, I've just got the resources up. What was it that you wanted me to highlight?
Click on the using a systematic approach page and then just scroll down to the bottom because there's that 5-sided pentagon,
Yes.
which is what we're talking about now is scoping. So this is the first sort of area, I guess, that we want to talk about, scoping. And there's the project scope image there. So what you'll see is in the first question that you've got to actually define each of these 5 elements, or match the following elements with their descriptions basically. And they're the 5 elements that we've taken from this area here, the project scope. And look, the definition of a project scope, and this is actually straight out of your learning materials, guys. In project management, the project of a scope is the sum total of all of its products and their requirements or features. So the scope is like everything, really. We're just trying to include everything. It's the sum total of all of its products. Hence scoping, or the start of a project, is really taking all of the items and laying them all out so that they've been identified. And this is what we're trying to do when we scope a project. We're trying to understand all of these 5 elements. What are the outcomes or benefits of the project? So where are we going with it? What's the criteria in which the project's going to be evaluated? How do we, effectively what we're saying there is, how will we know if it's been successful or not? The customers and the stakeholders, who is involved in this particular project, who's affected by the particular project. So a stakeholder could be effectively anyone who's directly or indirectly affected by the actual runnings of that particular project. The work tasks that are required, that's a big part of the project scope. So what are the things that we need to do to get this project happening, to make it successful? And the other component of that pentagon is the resources, so the human resources and the financial resources as well. It's really probably one of the most important stages of a project. Project scoping is your planning. This is your preparation. The success of every project is going to be measured quite differently, but without a doubt, if no time has been put into actually understanding what the whole scope of the project is and actually to lay it out, proper planning, you're going to find it's probably not the most successful of projects. Do we want to talk about each of those 5 areas or definitions? Are we happy for students to go through the materials to answer each of those? What do you reckon, guys?
Oh, yeah, look, I'm happy for the students to go through each of those. I know that when it does come to one of the assessments as well, I think the students are given the opportunity to really create their own project scope for a possible or a potential project that they're doing.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think from that perspective, I think this particular diagram gives a nice overview, and I think the students could probably continue and kind of explore each of these items as well on their own.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Sounds good.
And everybody's perception might be a little bit different, and if they're thinking about their own workplace, their own environment, their own experiences, so they can sort of, take their own ideas on board about each of those.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
The next question, do you want to read out question 2, Alyssa?
Sure. How can you ensure your team spend the necessary 15% benchmark throughout the scoping phase when undertaking project work? Okay. So you've got, this is a beautiful multiple choice question here, okay, which I love. I think it's just perfect. But the resources also do actually talk about that concept of having a 15% benchmark throughout the scoping phase as well, and the importance of making sure that there is a considerably large amount of time on a project that is actually spent in that actual scoping phase and planning. Because as Adam, you mentioned before, if you haven't really outlined your scope and you haven't considered an overview and mapped out and laid out your project, essentially you're going to probably probably have very little success with it. So that question really does talk about that 15% benchmark. Now, I think there is a slide in here as well about that.
Yeah, I think it's the one you're on actually. Isn't it
Is it
not?
that one?
No, maybe not. Maybe not.
No, yeah. Well, I think it's in one of the other slides where it does definitely talk about that 15%. I'm just trying to...
Yep. You know, what's that expression? Time spent planning is time well spent, or something like that. Clearly, I don't know it well because my time management skills need a whole lot of work. But
If you don't plan, you plan to fail. Isn't it something like that one?
I see we're both the same, Alison. This is one of us needs.
Yeah, failing to plan is planning to fail.
Exactly. Who writes a shopping list before they go shopping? You know, watch two people in the supermarket, one without a shopping list, that's me, and another one with. And, you know, effectively, the shopping list is like the scoping. This is the 15% planning that we're talking about. Any good project needs to follow this rule of thumb. You need to spend that 15% in that planning, that scoping phase before you get into the project. So writing a shopping list, that's your 15%. Watch two people in a going shopping, the one that has and the one that hasn't actually spent time preparing, and see how long these two spend in the supermarket. You watch me walking around, I'm confused, I'm not sure what I've got, what haven't I got, what do I need, who am I? I'm questioning my own validity as a member of society at this point. And then the other person that has a plan, that has a bit of a, you know, a system of walking around and ticking off, and that's the best analogy I can give for this, is this 15% as well. You know, that 15% is writing the shopping list, and you know the project itself is doing the shop. If you spend that 15%, and that's the rule of thumb, you know, you're going to minimize a lot of issues going forward. And money.
And
Sorry.
and totally, you know, it's so funny because if I had my sister here right now, she would tell you about the experience that she had with me on the weekend in the shopping centre because I did not write a shopping list. Instead, I was trying to think in my head what I needed, and she said, and she honestly thought it was the worst 2 hours of her life. She just never wants to go into another shop again because I had totally failed to plan. It was horrifying. So I'm now hopefully always, as a lesson learned, always write that shopping list. Always plan for that adventure.
So you've actually found the actual page there, Alyssa, yeah, that had information. So guys, check out that link there. It talks about that 15% benchmark, and the question is really asking, you know, how can you ensure that your team. So we want you guys to be trying to think of these questions from the perspective of a project manager. So from the perspective of somebody who's leading the project team. You don't necessarily have to be the person that's paying for the project, but you're the one that's sort of putting together the team. So imagine you're the team leader or the project manager, which is the right terminology. How would you encourage or ensure that your team spend that necessary 15% time in that space? And that's all that question is all about.
Yeah. All right. So if we move down to question number 3, it says, select 9 documents you might use during the scoping of a project out of the following list.
There's a whole page in the learning materials on documentation for projects. So I guess the best thing for guys to do is, I think the page is project scope and project documentation. Maybe we'll show the guys. Yeah, that's the one.
There you go.
So there's going to be a range of.
You mentioned it before, Adam.
Sorry, I mentioned it.
So you mentioned it a few times before when you were talking about the project that you were involved in, sort of the reporting that you had to do at a few different stages along the way. So that's you know, such an important part of it is, you know, documenting the information and making sure that, you know, things are done correctly as they were planned for.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was talking about a functional requirements document. It's actually, and quite often it's also known as a BRD, which is just a business requirements document. So on any project, a business might say, okay, well, this is what we need the project to deliver. These are the business requirements, and that is definitely one of the documents that you'll find in a project scope or the initial phase. So again, when we're talking scope, we're talking about that planning, that initial, you know, the writing of the shopping list. What are the sort of things that what are the sort of documents that you might need in that initial planning phase. So there's a whole heap that are listed here, but when you're answering that question, just keep that in mind that we're just talking about that initial, because there are some documents in this list that are actually incorrect as per the answer, but are not incorrect as per, they are documents you would find in a project, just not necessarily the ones you're going to find at the start of a project, if that makes sense. So you've got to select 9 here, and as we said, guys, if you get any wrong, don't worry about it. You've got unlimited attempts here, so just keep pushing through. Cool. Next question.
All right, so nice true and false, true or falsy here.
Yay.
So the scoping definition stage is essential for later project success. If the project is not properly defined and scoped and not properly linked with organisational goals and objectives of the business, there is a high risk that the project will not be completed successfully. Is that true or is that false? You just have to select the correct answer.
Correct.
Yes.
I mean, true. I mean, no, correct. I mean, yes. What you said was right.
Shall we move on to the next question? We probably don't need to spend too much time on that little question.
That's right. The next one's a video.
Yes. So all students, you just have to pop that little, push that little play button there, and what you'll see what did you learn from watching the YouTube video in relation to supporting your team to deliver the project? And from this group here of 6 answers, you just have to select one, okay? So does it help you to overcome the bumps in the road, supports you to achieve your objectives, the support you give your team will assist you to get the outcome you need, identify strengths and weaknesses in advance, be a step ahead on projects, or all of the above, okay?
Sounds pretty straightforward. It's actually a short video. How long? I think it's 2 or 3 minutes in total, so probably don't need to spend too much time on that one either.
Yeah.
And is that the fair? Oh no, we've still got a couple more in this set. Yeah, 2 more questions.
We've got still two more questions. So you've got question 6. So what are some ways you can support your team on a current project? Can you consult with them? Do you hold regular team meetings with them? Do you ask for ideas and feedback? Do you follow up on ideas and feedback, or is it all of the above? Okay. So Alison, obviously you mentioned a little bit about the importance of the team when it comes to actually working in a project, and I think we go on to later explore the actual importance of having your team participate and being aware of the progression and the financial status of projects and having that transparency in a project, which obviously contributes to its success. So.
Absolutely, and making sure you've got the people doing the right jobs that suit their skills. Is it a project that you need to help people develop more skills? So you can get a little bit creative with what people are doing, and that's part of that supportive role that you can take as a leader when you're managing a project. So there's a lot of different things that you can do and a lot of different ways you can think about it, and ways that you can be really, really involved with managing the team really effectively.
The beautiful thing is about this diploma, guys, is that everything sort of relates to each other. We're talking about project management here, but we are still talking about leadership. We're still talking about teams. We're still talking about methods of feedback and different, so everything does come together at some point as well. So if, look, if we tend to breeze over certain areas, at some point it'll all kind of come back together as well. But great point, Alison.
Okay. All right, so we'll have a look at that last question in this particular new activity. So you've got, consider a project where you are required to refurbish Parliament House in Canberra.
Yay.
Go. Match the 4 stakeholder groups with their different needs and expectations. So again, I believe this is a little drop down.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the purpose here, like as I mentioned earlier, what we want you guys to do is think about these questions from the perspective of being the project manager. So you're in charge of managing these different stakeholder groups. Now, as we know, with a stakeholder can be any grouping of people that have either a direct or indirect involvement in the project. So they don't have to be working on our team to be stakeholders. In fact, quite the opposite. In this example, you'll see one of the stakeholders is actually politicians. They have nothing to do with the refurbishment of Parliament House except for they're going to be the ones sitting in Parliament House once it's been painted and refurbished. So indirectly, they very much are a part of this project. So being a project manager, it's highly important that you manage the needs and expectations of a range of different people. And fortunately or unfortunately, as a project manager, what that means is that at different times, you're going to need to wear different hats. Now, if the project sponsor, really that's the people that are putting the money up for the project. So the way that I engage with the project sponsor is going to be different from the way that I engage with construction workers, which is going to be again different from the way I engage with suppliers, the people that are supplying paint or other materials for the project. So I guess that's just the take out there for me is that you've got to wear a range of different hats, and at different times as a project manager, you've got to understand that different stakeholder groups have different needs and wants and desires and expectations and all of those things.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Okay.
That's the end of the first
All
set.
right. So,
We jump onto the second
yeah.
set. Sorry, Alyssa.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was just going to say. Obviously, we'll head on to that next series of learning activities.
Beauty.
Ah, lovely. So, project planning and preparation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, this is an automatic response quiz as well, which is great.
Yep.
Unlimited attempts. You only got 5 questions here, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
So
All
the
right.
first question is
Yeah.
actually, why is breaking down the steps of a project so important in that planning phase? So, it's actually referred to as a systematic approach, breaking down a entire project to smaller, bite-sized pieces. A project really is a huge, giant beast. A systematic
Mm.
approach is really just taking a big complex operation and breaking it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. So I'm just going to put the question out there to you guys, but why do you think it's important to take a big project or a complex task or a really large operation and break it down into smaller, measurable chunks? Why do you think that's a good idea?
I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, it's going to help you to do things like stick to a budget. It's going to help you to stick to your time frames a lot more effectively. It's going to help people probably communicate more effectively if everybody knows exactly what they're doing and they do have those small steps along the way. So it's all part of, having maybe regular debriefing meetings and things like that. So you can say, okay, what have we achieved this week? It might be a 12-month plan or project that you're working on, but if you break it down into small steps like that, people are all going to feel like they are achieving along the way. So I think it helps a lot with satisfaction and confidence as well. So there's a multitude of reasons, I think, for
Absolutely.
doing that.
I think for me, motivation's the big one. I mean, when you're working on a big, long project, you need to give your team and those that are involved a chance to feel like they've achieved something. And especially if a project takes 2 or 3 years to implement, you need to have like little wins along the way. You need to have little subsections where you go, we have made it to stage 1. There might be 5 stages in this project. Stage 1 is complete. Well done, everybody. Did a great job on stage 1. We're now ready to focus all of our energies and attentions on stage 2. So it helps with human motivation because you do get that little win, but you also get an opportunity to take a deep breath and then to reset as well. Alyssa, what do you think is one of the reasons why breaking down projects into stages is an important part of that planning and scoping phase?
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of something, like I think it's really important to be able to, hit those little milestones in between, and I think it's important to maintain that level of motivation as well. I mean, I think projects can last for such a long period of time, and there can be things that might pop up, along the way that perhaps you didn't notice, and there are little challenges that perhaps might have come, and you've got a group of people that you're trying to drive to be able to achieve something, and human motivation doesn't last for long periods of time. So I think breaking down steps is definitely going to, and that systematic approach is definitely going to help maintain and elongate that motivation, but just see an outcome and see successes as well. I think that's really important. That's really important. Excuse me.
It's also a risk management thing as well, Alyssa, because by breaking something down into smaller parts, you can do what it's actually, I think it's something that maybe software engineers or engineers use the word decoupling. So in a complex system, you might have so many moving parts that are all operating at the same time, but doing a process of decoupling, which is essentially separating parts from another within that system, it enables you to minimize risk, because if one of those parts fails or goes down, the other parts of the project can still run and still be independent of, they're not waiting for that other thing to finish before they move to the next stage, that stage 2 or that stage 3. So by breaking things down to smaller subsections or chunks is also a risk management issue, and it attempts to minimize some of those errors affecting the entire project too. So there are a couple of reasons why we do that.
Yeah, and I think that later on, we explore the whole concept of risk a little bit more, and some of the different associated risks that can come about because of a project. And there are quite substantial amounts of different types of exciting risks out there.
Students will be glad to know that we'll be talking about risks in tomorrow's webinar. So
that's exactly right.
Get your friends together.
That's something you love talking about, risk.
We do. I know I always talk about this, but there's a psychologist called George Miller, and he actually wrote a famous paper called The Magical Number 7 plus or minus 2. I don't know why it's in relation to what we're talking about, but I'm just going to say it. But it talks about the limits that the human brain has on, a capacity for processing information. We can only remember 7 things plus or minus 2 at any given time.
Yeah.
So, by putting things into chunks or by breaking down these big projects into logical sort of containers, just makes it easier for us human beings that have to remember so much information. We can't remember all that information. We can only remember 5 to 9 bits of information at any given time. And we all know on a project there's going to be more than 5 to 9 bits of information. So by chunking all of that, all of the different stages or steps in a project, it actually just helps us process the information a little bit more as well. So yeah.
All right.
Question 2, it's a drag and drop, hey?
I know this is very exciting, this question, a drag and drop. It's an interactive question.
Yay.
Okay, so students, obviously what you guys want to do here is just drag and drop. So you obviously want to fill in the gaps. So to work effectively with project stakeholders to achieve the best outcome, make sure to have regular and timely something, be committed to agreed deadlines, and create something kind of plans, involve and agree on decisions during the such and such stage, okay? So all you'll need to do is maybe drag and drop into different areas to be able to complete that sentence.
Sounds good. I think the students can work it out from there easy.
Engaging. Okay, let's have a look at question 3 then. It says, select 6 items from the following list that are considered to be project activities. Okay, so you've got to select 6. Is coordinating staff meetings, stakeholders, budgets, communicating with stakeholders, systematic approach, monitoring financial agreements, reviewing and evaluating project success, preparing the project plan, milestones, preparing documents.
Yep.
So 6 items that are considered to be a project activity.
Check out the page titled Project Activities in your learning materials. Can't go wrong. There it is. Alyssa, you're all over it. That's the one.
Yep.
All the information's there for you.
There you go. Nice. Okay, now let's move on to question number 4. Match the following types of costs that you might find included in a project budget, project plan budget, with their corresponding descriptions. So capital expenditure, choose the answer, okay? You've got subcontractor costs, you've got labour costs, and you've got allocated costs. Now, I believe the resources also talk about these things as well, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the last two questions have a page each allocated to them as well. So um, with that one, I think there's project expenditure as the actual. There it is. Yeah, that's the page.
Yeah, so that'll help you. Uh-oh. Sorry, everybody.
That's all right. I might just change the screen back to mine. Oh no, you're good? Okay, great.
Yep. So as you can see here, you'll see some different little definitions that may help you with trying to work out what matches what. So that's this slide, project expenditure.
And for all those that don't know, Alyssa lives at the end of the tarmac and has planes that fly right above her head at any given moment, even during webinars. I know it's strange, but it does happen.
I usually catch it, but then I'll say something and it'll fly over and I won't be able to move. So I'm sorry about that.
We wouldn't have it any other way. And the last question, Alyssa, is actually just talking about project tools. So in project
Absolutely.
management, we have a range of different tools that can assist us as project managers to manage our projects. Now, whether we're managing the costs, the incomings, the outgoing costs because we've got a budget that we need to work on, whether we're managing the day-to-day activities and we're keeping an eye on how long things are taking because we don't want to be pushed over time on our project. We have different tools that can help us do all of those different tasks. So do check out the actual page that says, I think Project Tools is the page. What's it called, this one? Yeah, Project Management.
Tool.
Spot on.
Tool.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a page that's really good for that as well. It actually talks about each of the items that you've got in your list here. So go to that page when you're answering this question. It'll actually refer to a couple of the key ones, a couple of the key tools that you need. And they're really helpful. Some of these tools are great visual guides because, you know, they'll actually show you what particular jobs need to be completed before the next job can start, per se. It's a risk management thing as well. You know, by having these tools available and by regularly reviewing these tools, you can get a quick, or you can get an update as to if something's running over time or if you might need extra hands on deck on a particular area. You know, it's really a methodology of, or a method of actually monitoring your project in real time. And that's the last question you've got for this set, guys. So that's sort of I guess that's the first stage of project management. It's all about preparing. It's about scoping your project. It's about planning and getting ready for the project. So guys, if you heard Alyssa earlier, the end result of this subject is that you guys are going to be designing your own project plan for your own project. That could be a project that you've been involved in the business, or about to be involved in the business. If you're not employed at the moment, or you haven't been in any project teams before, you're not sure, you can use an example of a project that you've been involved in or about to be involved in your own life. So whether that's like renovating the house, as Alison was talking about before, they are absolutely fine and legitimate. Or you can actually go off and research a particular project and then just do it from that theoretical exercise. There's nothing too complicated, so we give you a template anyway for that. We'll talk you through that in the assessment workshop at the end of this subject in terms of what you need to do for that assessment. But nothing to worry about because we actually give you all of the things that you need. You just need to fill in the gaps if you like. So yeah, that's basically what we wanted to talk about today in reference to getting started on this particular subject, project management. Alyssa or Alison, did you want to add anything else to the session before we close down this first session?
No, I'm good. I'm good, Alison.
Yeah, all good. I think that'll get the juices flowing on the whole idea of managing projects and start some new thought processes. It does cover a lot in that first couple of activities, but they're pretty
Yeah.
fun activities to do. They're not just, okay, write a paragraph on this, determine that. It's, yeah, a little bit more interactive, and so it's a good, fun way to start this particular
It's
block of work.
instant satisfaction, guys. You get an instant mark straight away, and as we mentioned, you need to get green boxes in each of the questions. If you have a yellow box, it means that you've got it partially correct, so you'll still need to resubmit or do a new attempt on that one until you get 100%. But as we mentioned, you get unlimited shots at it, so just go for gold. You can't get it wrong, and you get instant satisfaction because you get a grade straight away, and you can get those first two learning activities done pretty quickly, and then be moving on to the next set. In which tomorrow we're going to be going through the resource support session 2, which we've booked in for 2 o'clock, I believe. Is that right, guys? So we're running that one, and it's going to be on project risk and budgeting. So we're really going to be just breaking down the whole idea of risk and how to manage risk management in general. So this is also part of your planning and preparation is handling risk. We'll be talking a little bit about that tomorrow, and that's tomorrow's session. So that's really it, guys. Thanks very, very much for your attendance in this Resource Support Workshop 1 for Project Management. So thanks for your attendance. We look forward to seeing you in the next session, Resource Support 2, where we'll be talking about project risk and budgeting.
Bye now.
Thanks, guys.